Howdy folks, it's Matthew, your friendly neighborhood technician, making another cool video for you out of Boise, Idaho. And in this video, we are looking at a 2002 Buick Park Avenue Ultra. Okay, now that's going to be very important that we point out that this is a Buick Park Avenue Ultra, not a Buick Park Avenue. One of the differences in between the two is the Ultra comes with the 3800 supercharged engine. And because the engine is supercharged, everything is going to be slightly different, from the steering system to the suspension to the CV axles. Everything is slightly different, so you have to be very careful when you're buying parts for it, because this is what I've learned. It's a 2002, so it's starting to fall in that year and time frame when parts are hard to get for it. They're hard to find. Now, I've noticed that if you're searching for parts online for a Buick Park Avenue Ultra, it is very possible that even if you put in Buick Park Avenue Ultra, it may even advertise that the part is for a Buick Park Avenue Ultra. However, because a Buick Park Avenue Ultra and a Buick Park Avenue are slightly different, you may end up getting a part that's for a Buick Park Avenue, not an Ultra. And that's what I've had to deal with this car twice now, on an axle and a rack and pinion. So what happened with this vehicle? Well, it's a pretty wild story. From what I understand, the owner thought that the axle had gone out on it as she was driving and heard a bang. And right after she heard that bang, apparently it was extremely hard to steer the vehicle. It just steered funny, and so she ended up driving it home, gave me a call. I went over and checked it out, and I noticed that as she was sitting at idle, turning the steering wheel back and forth, that the wheels, they were just a little off and moving, but the front end of this car, as she would turn the steering wheel back and forth, would go like this: back and forth, back and forth. And obviously the car itself, the body of the car itself, is not supposed to move. So I found that interesting, and I noticed that when I looked down in here at the rack and pinion, that the rack and pinion was moving back and forth, or in other words, it had broken away from or been separated from the frame. And that is exactly what happened. Now, how do you get a rack and pinion out of this Buick Park Avenue? Well, first of all, it's a job that you need to think safety first. You need to be careful. Don't use hydraulic jacks. Use scissor jacks. They're not going to fail on you. The hydraulics aren't going to fail on you. Use as many scissor jacks as you can get. You're going to want to raise the vehicle up on jack stands, and then use scissor jacks on both sides to reinforce yourself, okay? And then from there, you're going to want to use scissor jacks on the front and back of the subframe, because in order for this job to happen, you're going to have to drop the subframe down. Now, something I always do with vehicle tires when I'm working on the ground like this underneath them is I always place the tires and rims underneath the frame of the vehicle. That way, if any of these jacks ever fail or break, if this car falls, it's going to fall on that rim, and it's going to give me that much space to hopefully crawl out of there, or that could be the difference in saving my life. So I always put rims and tires underneath the frame of the vehicle. Now then, once you've done that, you're going to want to go ahead and remove this right here, and just pick that up. You're going to have two 10mm bolts to pull that off. Pick that up, because you're going to need that space to be able to get down in there to get to your pinch bolt on your rack and pinion, okay? And then once you've removed your pinch bolt, by going in through the top with a 10mm socket and ratchet, go ahead and then make sure that your steering wheel is locked in place and into the straight position. Once you've got your pinch bolt, and remember, you're going to go through the top and down in there, you're going to have to lay across the top of the engine and just get your hands down in there. Once you've got that pinch bolt out, you can then start working on removing the subframe. go ahead, you're going to need 18 millimeter impact socket and an impact gun or a big heavy ratchet with a breaker bar. It's 18 millimeters on both sides of this. And this is when you're going to set up your scissor jacks. And you also want to set up a middle jack. Set it up underneath your oil or transmission pan. Put a block of wood to disperse the weight across the pan so you're not crushing anything. And so that way the engine can stay in place while you disconnect the engine and everything from the engine cradle to drop it down in order to clear the rack and pinion out, okay? And then just use your jacks to adjust the rack and pinion up and down. All right, and again, it's gonna be 18 millimeters on both sides. You're gonna have an 18 millimeter for your tie rod end as well. And you're gonna get those out. And you're going to go ahead and get those completely out. Now at this point, you'll be able to look in here and you'll be able to see your rack and pinion sitting in there all the way across. At this point, you're also going to have a heat shield, okay? And this heat shield is going to be held on top of the rack and pinion by two 10 millimeter bolts. So you're going to need to get in there and you're going to need to get that heat shield out. And then once you've gotten the heat shield out, you've also got your engine cradle, also known as subframe, disconnected. Part of that process is going to be to go ahead, don't disconnect them, but just loosen them so this engine cradle can flex. Loosen them up front. Once you've got that out, then you're going to have 18 millimeter sockets to get your mounting bolts out, okay? And the rack and pinion, once you've got this dropped down enough, is going to pull out of the driver's side. All right, that is going to come out of that cavity that you see right there. That whole piece is just going to pull out right here. And so there's a rundown. Now, why are we doing this? Because the rack and pinion broke. It broke away from the frame. And I'm going to show this to you. Look at this. Right here. Look at that. Wow, that rack and pinion bracket broke. And as a result, this came out. This bolt and everything broke and came out. And you can see right here and right here. So the rack and pinion was flexing back and forth on there. Well, while I'm working on this, I'm also noticing, look at this piece of frame right here. Look, that's been rolled back. Okay, see that? And then if you go down around the bottom of this vehicle and look right there, you see right here, all right, and so on and so on. There are signs that somebody has bottomed out this car really harsh. I don't know if somebody was hot rodding it and they hit a speed bump super hard, or if they jumped up over a curb super hard, or what the heck they hit. But that is the only explanation that I can come up with that would cause that. Okay? Somebody bottomed this car out. And you look at that other evidence underneath the car, that frame area, that metal piece that's been caught and rolled back, and a few other things. It's obvious somebody bottomed this car out seriously. And that's how this rack and pinion got broke. Now remember when I was saying you need to be careful between the Buick Park Avenue and the Buick Park Avenue Ultra? So because it's a supercharged car and it has all the bells and whistles, it has electronic power assist steering, ABS, all that stuff. These rack and pinions look exactly the same, except for this one does not have electronic power steering option. So when I talked to Detroit Axle about it, sure enough, it's listed as a Buick Park Avenue Ultra, but it's for a Buick Park Avenue, and so they're going to go ahead and get that changed out for me. It's just going to add some more time to the job, that's all. So be careful when you're looking for parts. I had the same issue with the axle as well. The axle looks almost exactly the same until you get it in person and realize that the axle for the Park Avenue and the axle for the Park Avenue Ultra are just slightly different, and that's because of that supercharged 3800. Now, while we're in here looking at some of this stuff, I don't know if you noticed, but you see that right there? That's why we're going to change out this axle while we're in here getting all this work done and stuff. But at this point, I just need to stop and work with Detroit Axle and see if I can get the proper rack and pinion in here and get that taken care of, and then we can get this job done and finished up. So there's that on that Buick Park Avenue. So, all right, everybody. Well, this is Matthew, your friendly neighborhood technician. I greatly appreciate you coming out and watching my videos and hanging out with me. Thanks for all your support. Check me out on GoFundMe.com and Patreon.com. I got a couple cool projects going on there. Definitely, I love interacting with you guys, so give me a shout out in the comments. I am signing off.